I've been pretty frustrated, I'm not going to lie. Everything that has transpired up until this point has just been disappointing and frustrating. I've wanted to continue my career here. I've created my life here. My wife and I have bought our first home here, so this has been somewhere where I've always wanted to be. And, just to see how things have played out has been disappointing. Obviously, I understand everything's a business, but at the same time, I want to put myself in a position where, I'm valued and, I feel appreciated and things like that. And, unfortunately, that hasn't transpired the way I wanted to.
Even when he's upset, he sounds like the nicest team player. All right, Terry McLaurin is unhappy, though, with his contract situation. And, of course, Pats fans are clamoring for the team to trade for him. Last season, by the way, McLaurin almost caught more touchdowns than all of the current Patriots wide receivers combined. So you know that they could use his production. Welcome into our Arbella Early Edition. Trenni Casey alongside Kayla Burton from SI. We have Breer. Bert, what are we hearing is back. So what are you hearing about the Patriots' interest in trading for Terry McLaurin?
There's not a whole lot happening right now between the Commanders and McLaurin, which is part of why the frustration is what it is. And that there hasn't been much progress because there hasn't been much talk between the sides. And I think that's why Terry felt compelled to say what he said publicly. And this is a guy who has been a team captain for a long time. Exemplary character, all of that. So my anticipation is that the Commanders are going to take a swing at getting something done with him over the course of the next week, just because it makes too much sense for both sides. I think the Patriots would be very interested in this. Now, there's a price point for all of it, and what would that mean? And, obviously he's not going to come here with an unresolved contract situation, so you'd be talking about a draft pick plus a contract. He's a little older than people realize because he was a 5-year college guy, so he's over 30 now. But, certainly as far as what they're looking for from a person, from a player, helping Drake, this guy checks every box.
Period. Every box. And I've said this from the start of it, Breer and Trenni. Terry McLaurin to be a New England Patriot would be the perfect combination with this not only wide receiver group, having an unknown kind of Stefon Diggs to see where he is at. I'm really, really curious to see once he puts the pads on, how does he look? How will he be in and out of his breaks? Is that knee holding up okay? What are you going to get out of Stefon Diggs? So that question is still up in the air, but why not bring in a guy like Terry McLaurin, who has had 5 straight seasons of 1,000 plus receiving yards? Not to mention, he pairs well, as Breer just mentioned, with a young quarterback in Jaden Daniels. Why not do it with a second-year quarterback in Drake Maye? I would be really, really concerned for Washington if, Trenni, they can't get this deal done with McLaurin. It would be a darn shame to see them not get it done, but it would be...
I'd be pretty stunned.
Yeah, I would be very, very stunned, to say the least.
That's the thing. He would fit in here. He would be a great addition to the Patriots, but the chances of him actually getting here, Bert, are slim to none. But let's just say, there's an offer that Washington can't refuse. If you were the Patriots, what would it cost? What would you be willing to give up? What would you be willing to pay Terry McLaurin in order to get him away from Washington?
I think you have to, in your head, have an idea of how good you're going to be. Because I don't think I give up a top half of the first round pick for him, right? So you have to be honest with yourself. And if it's the 20th pick in the draft, then, I would give up the 20th pick in the draft for him. Would I give up the 10th pick in the draft for him? Probably not, and that's no affront to Terry McLaurin. It's just the type of player he is and his age and what you'd be getting out of your first-round pick and some of the needs you have long-term. I don't know that you're that close that you want to mortgage picks like that. But, I think you'd have to look at it. And I think the other part of it that, you want to pay attention to from the Commander's side is look at all their other actions. They trade for Laramie Tunsil. They trade for Deebo Samuel. They trade for Marshawn Lattimore. Getting rid of Terry McLaurin would not fit with anything else they've done.
Yeah, and, I would definitely agree with you on the first-round pick, because Terry McLaurin, because of his age, you can argue, yes, he is the veteran experience. He's put up those numbers. He's a playmaker. He can high-point the ball. He knows how to play this game and pairs very well with young quarterbacks. We've seen what he's been able to do in the NFC East and how he really kind of changed their program around, or the organization around as well. But I will say this, there are still playmakers. It's not a elite right now when you look at the wide receiver core. But you did bring in Matt Collins, which I'm not going to go on and on saying, oh, he's the guy. But when you have Steph Diggs, you have Matt Collins, you have Pop Douglas, all in another year, you have semi-playmakers, Trenni, that, you know, we're curious to see with a new offensive coordinator, really a new coaching staff, what this group can do. I wouldn't give too much in order to get Terry McLaurin, but this is a team that has the most cap space in the NFL.
Well, as we've said, most likely the Patriots, Commanders, are not going to part ways with Terry McLaurin. So if Patriots can't trade for him, how do they get their number one? Because here's a list of the best free agent wideouts next offseason. Not much there after McLaurin. Mike Evans, obviously a really good wide receiver, but he's already 32, which means, you know, you're looking at 33, 34, mid-30s, end of his career. I don't think Denver is going to let Cortland Sutton walk. So you also have Juwan Jennings, though, on there, Breer. What are you hearing about maybe the next best disgruntled wide receiver that may become available for the Patriots?
At this point, you're talking about, you know, like guys like Jennings, who's not happy with his contract. He did a short-term extension with the Niners that was sort of a Band-Aid. Like, he sees what's coming, which is, you know, they have Ricky Pearsall there already as a first-round pick. They're going to be getting Brandon Ayuk back, who they've already invested in. Is his next contract coming for the Niners? That's the way he's thinking about it. So, again, it's another one of these where if you bring in Terry McLaurin, you're talking about not just giving up the pick, but also giving up the contract, because he's not going to be any happier here with an unresolved situation than he would be in Washington. With Jennings, it would be the exact same thing. How far are you willing to go to pay somebody like Juwan Jennings, who I think would be a fit, but if, you know, like 15, 20, are you willing to pay that much for a guy who's never been more than a number 3 and a stand-in number 2? Like, I think that's a question. And then you have to wait and just see who's bad. You know what I mean? Like, because you're getting close to you get close to the trade deadline, some opportunities can come available that way.
Yeah, I'm not really moving the needle here for Juwan Jennings. Does the fit maybe make sense? Because there's still the question mark of what do these receivers, what their production will be like when you really don't know. I know when the Patriots brought in Steph Diggs, everyone's like, that's the answer, that's the guy. But how's that ACL repair? How is he going to come off? And so, yeah, you can have a kind of comfort receiver as that third option with the Juwan Jennings, Trenni, but I don't think that, you know, is it worth giving up draft capital for a guy like this who's going to pan out to be 30-plus years old soon? I don't see the worth.
The only thing I would push back on that is the Patriots have not proven that they can draft quality number 1 wide receivers. So, Bert, my question is, how do they get a number 1 wide receiver? Like, if they can't trade for one because good ones just don't become available anymore and they can't draft them, it seems like they're stuck between this rock and the hard place. Well, and they may have to overpay for a guy that's a sort of fancy number 2 now.
You just have to. I mean, I think the best thing is to stay loose. This is why I fully agreed with them going after Brandon Ayuk last year, because opportunities like that, it would have been early. If you're sequencing things and how you want to put it together, maybe you don't make that sort of sacrifice when you're not going to be very good, and it's a first-round pick is worth too much to give up. But like, you don't know when opportunities like that are going to come along. The Steph Diggs thing in Buffalo came along because of a tweet, believe it or not. It was Brandon Beane seeing something Steph Diggs tweeted, calling the Vikings and being like, is he available? And then 12 hours later, the trade happens, you know? So these things can be really unpredictable. This isn't 10 or 15 or 20 years ago where these things don't happen, particularly at that position, opportunities can come. I just don't think you can be gun-shy about the idea of drafting one either on the premise that you've never been able to do it. Mike Vrabel's new here. Josh McDaniels is back now, right? But Vrabel is new, and Vrabel hasn't been here as a coach. Elliott Wolf does have some history of drafting receivers from Green Bay that was pretty good over the years. You look at their track record of getting guys outside of the first round, it was really good. I mean, I think you just have to kind of keep pulling levers until you find one.
All right, well, speaking of this current group, over the last week plus, we've seen some videos posted of Drake Maye and the Patriots receivers working out ahead of camp, which starts next week. Of course, the Patriots quarterbacking company bonding, practicing, all with the hope, Bert, that everything and everyone kind of can hit the ground running once camp begins. What are you hearing about Steph Diggs? As Kayla has mentioned a couple times, there's a lot of question marks around him and that repaired knee. How does he look?
Yeah.
Do you think he'll be ready to go?
I think he probably starts camp on PUP, and I think he probably comes off at some point between now and end of August, right? I do think that he's trending right now to being able to play in week 1, which is, Like, if you look at it, it's not that crazy a recovery timetable. He was injured right around Halloween. The end of August would be 10 months. Again, like, I think the bigger question becomes, Kayla, whether or not you can expect 100% of Steph Diggs this year, because that first year can be tricky sometimes, especially for an older player. But just as far as like when he's going to be cleared to actually play football, full speed and 11 on 11, I think at some point in August it happens, and that timetable isn't that crazy considering the juncture of last year when he was hurt.
I don't even expect him to be 100%, but if he can get to that 85, maybe 80 to 85% range, then you got a good playmaker who can still, do things out there on the field. I'm looking for two things. One, how his knee, what everyone's looking for, right? What's his knee going to be like? Is he going to make the cuts that he can almost semi-used to make in this time around? And then on top of that, will he know the playbook? What has he done in the past 5 weeks? Is he really locked in? Because I remember he said to Phil Perry mentioned this, that he wasn't really too confident about the playbook at that point. So these past 5 weeks and where he's going to be at in training camp is going to be very telling.